my dear students. Yesterday, I discussed with you the whole gist of this play Mother's Day by J.B. Priestley. I told you that this is a play which raises a social issue. Mother, who plays a pivotal role in the family, is treated shabbily by the husband and the children, which is not a very good idea. With the Mrs. Pearson is the mother, and with the help of Mrs. Fitzgibbon, that is her next door neighbor, who is a fortune teller, she tries to stand up for her own rights. The family is shocked to see the new avatar of the mother, Mrs. Pearson, and they get a taste of their own medicine, and finally Mrs. Pearson gets the respect she always wanted and deserved. So basically, this play tells us that humorously it portrays the status of a mother in the family. The author J.B. Priestley brings out the plight of a mother in the play. So now first of all, I would like to introduce to you the different characters of the play. That is Mrs. Anne Pearson, that is the mother, which we are calling Mrs. Pearson. Then George Pearson is the husband. Doris Pearson and Cyril Pearson are the two children of this couple. And Mrs. Fitzgibbon is the next door neighbor of Mrs. Pearson, who helps her to fight for her rights. Now the action takes place in the living room of Pearson's house in a London suburb. So basically, whenever the play starts, the whole setting of the scene is given. So it is basically the action takes place in the living room of the Pearson's house in a London suburb. The living room of the Pearson family afternoon. It is a comfortably furnished, much lived in room in a small suburban, semi-detached villa. If necessary, only one door need to be used, but it is better with two. One up left leading to the front door and the stairs, and the other in the right wall leading to the kitchen and the back door. There can be a muslin covered window in the left wall and possibly one in the right wall too. The fireplace is assumed to be in the fourth wall. There is a settee up right, an armchair down left and one down right. A small table with two chairs on either side of it stands at the center. So basically the whole setting of the sitting room is given in this paragraph, that where the window is, where the door is, whether there is one door, whether there is two doors, a settee is there to sit, then an armchair is there to sit. So the whole setting of the room is given in this paragraph. Now moving on to the next paragraph. When the curtain rises, it is an afternoon in early autumn, and the stage can be well lit. Mrs. Pearson at right and Mrs. Fitzgibbon at left are sitting opposite each other at a small table, on which are two teacups and saucers, and the cards with which Mrs. Fitzgibbon has been telling Mrs. Pearson's fortune. So as the curtain rises, we see that these are the two women, Mrs. Fitzgibbon and Mrs. Pearson, sitting next to each other. There are two cups and two saucers, and there are cards lying on the table through which Mrs. Fitzgibbon is trying to tell Mrs. Pearson's fortune. Now Mrs. Pearson's personality is a pleasant but worried looking woman in her 40s. See, you can see from the face, this is Mrs. Pearson. She is a worried looking personality in her 40s, and Mrs. Fitzgibbon is older, heavier, and a strong and sinister personality. She is a very sinister, strange personality. She is heavier, she is strong, and she has a very strange personality. She is smoking. It is very important that these two should have sharply contrasting voices. Mrs. Pearson speaking in a light, flurried sort of tone. So Mrs. Pearson has a soft tone of speaking, with a touch of suburban cockney perhaps, and Mrs. Fitzgibbon with a deep voice, rather Irish perhaps. So she has a suburban accent, whereas Mrs. Fitzgerald had a deep voice and a strong voice, perhaps with an Irish accent. So there is a huge contrast between the two women, which you can see in the picture also. So as the scene opens, we see that these two women are sitting and two saucers and two cups are lying in front of them. This is Mrs. Fitzgerald and this is Mrs. Pearson. She's a soft lady in her early 40s with a worried look on her face, whereas Mrs. Fitzgerald is much more confident, older, heavier, with a deep and strong voice. Now let's see their dialogues, what they exchange with each other. So basically it's a play in which the plight of the mother is shown, how she is badly treated and how Mrs. Fitzgerald, the neighbor of Mrs. Pearson, helps her to come out with her rights. Okay, so this is what the whole play is about, and there are certain humorous touches also in the play. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald collecting up the cards, and that's all I can tell you, Mrs. Pearson. Could be a good fortune, could be a bad one. All depends on yourself now. Make up your mind, and there it is. Now she's actually probably telling something by looking at the fortune cards which she has, and she says that it can be a good fortune also, it can be a bad fortune also, but it all depends on you. You have to make up your mind, and there it is. Now Mrs. Pearson, yes, thank you Mrs. Fitzgerald. I am much obliged. I am sure it's wonderful having a real fortune teller living next door. Did you learn that out east too? So he says that it is I am fortunate to have you as a fortune teller and living next door. You are a neighbor to me, so it's fortunate that I have a neighbor like you. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald, I did. 12 years I had of it. With my old man rising to the lieutenant quartermaster, he learnt a lot and I learnt a lot more. But will you make up your mind now, Mrs. Pearson dear? Put your foot down once and for all and be the mistress of your own house and the boss of your own family. So Mrs. Fitzgerald said that even I had my man who was a lieutenant quartermaster. He learnt a lot and I learnt a lot more. But she says that you must put your foot forward and teach your family a lesson because they are taking you for granted. She says that don't be the mistress of your house, but instead be the boss of your own family. So this is what she tells Mrs. Pearson. Mrs. Pearson smiling apologetically, that's easier said than done. Besides, I am so fond of them, even if they are so thoughtless and selfish, they don't mean to be. So Mrs. Pearson is a soft lady. She tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that all these things are easier said than done. It is easy to say certain things, but they are not easily done. So he says, besides, I'm so fond of them, I'm so fond of the family, that if they are thoughtless and selfish, still I will do whatever I can do for them. Mrs. Fitzgerald, maybe not, but it would be better for them if they learn to treat you properly. So she says that maybe not, they should know how to treat you properly. So Mrs. Fitzgerald basically is trying to convince Mrs. Pearson that you should not bear the wrong things which are happening to you and you must teach your family a lesson. So Mrs. Fitzgerald, no doubt about it all. Who's the better for being spoiled? Grown man, lad or girl? So he says that no doubt about it all. I know you love your family, but who's the better for being spoiled? The grown man means your husband, the lad means your son or girl. Nobody. You think it does them good when you run after them all the time? Take their orders as if you were the servant in the house? Stay at home every night while they go out enjoying themselves? So she says, is that good? Does that sound good to you? That you are taking orders from them all the time? You are being treated as a servant by them, by your husband, by your son and by your daughter. and you stay back at night when they go out night in every night enjoying their party. So she says that this is not justice which is happening to you. Never in all your life. It's the ruin of them as well as you. Husbands, sons, and daughters should be taking notice of wives and mothers, not giving them orders and treating them like dirt. And don't tell me you don't know what I mean, for I know more than you have told me. So she says that daughters, sons, and husbands, they should not treat wives and mothers as servants or as dirt, but they should know how to respect them. They should know their worth. So she says that I know what I'm trying to tell you because I know more than what you have already told me. Now Mrs. Pearson dubiously means when she's not certain, uncertainly. I keep dropping a hint. So she says that I keep dropping a hint with my husband, son, and daughter that I don't feel good when you treat me like this. Hint? It's more than hints your family needs, Mrs. Pearson. So Mrs. Fitzgibbon tells Mrs. Pearson that hint is not sufficient for them. You need more than hint to give them, Mrs. Pearson. Mrs. Pearson dubiously, again uncertainly, I suppose it is. But I do hate any unpleasantness, and it's so hard to know where to start. I keep making up my mind to have it out with them, but somehow I don't know how to begin. So she says that I don't want any unpleasantness, any kind of uncomfortability at home. That is why I keep taking their behavior. And I also don't know how to begin myself, from where to begin myself. She glances at her watch, at a clock. Oh, good gracious, look at the time. Nothing ready, and they will be home any minute, and probably all in a hurry to go out again. So then she looks at she looks at the watch and says that, oh, it's time for them to come home, and nothing is ready, no meal is ready, and they will come any minute to the house and demand food, and again they would move out. And she is about to rise. Mrs. Fitzgibbon reaches out across the table and pulls her down. And she's about to rise from her chair to go and prepare the meal in the kitchen, and Mrs. Fitzgibbon pulls her down. Mrs. Fitzgibbon, let them wait or look after themselves for once. This is where your foot goes down. Start now. So she says, first thing you should do is that make them wait for the food and put your foot down. And this is the first step in teaching them a lesson. She lights a cigarette from the one she has just finished. Mrs. Pearson, embarrassed. Mrs. Fitzgibbon, I know you mean well. In fact, I agree with you, but I just can't. And it's no use you trying to make me. If I promise you, I'd really have it out with them. I know I wouldn't be able to keep my promise. So she says, Mrs. Pearson denies that whatever you are telling me, I know you are telling me right. You are telling me for my benefit. I agree, but I cannot just do this. I cannot deny food to them. I cannot keep up the promise that I will keep my foot down and I will not serve them food today. So I'm going to stop here, and tomorrow we will continue reading it. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.